And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon. Today I'm talking with Kat Lee. And well, first of all, Kat, thank you so much for squeezing me into your calendar.
Thanks so much for having me, Michael.
You are welcome. It's fun because she's on the other side of the world from me. She's in Sydney, Australia. And a dear friend of mine lives over in that general area of the world. And scheduling is challenging when you're talking halfway around the world. But I'm so thankful that we have Zoom that we can actually do this. So Kat and her friends have put together a really, really cool business where as it's on-demand business strategy for ambitious entrepreneurs. And we're going to have a great conversation because anybody who knows me knows I am strategy first all the time. Because so many times we get involved with tactics and shiny objects that we shouldn't be touching because we don't have great strategy, not just around business, but around operations and finance and everything. So we're going to have a fun conversation. You're going to learn a lot. And the first thing I want to learn is, Kat, how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, well, I think for me, that's the fundamental question, right? Like, what do we do? What do we spend our lives doing? But truthfully, a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of, I think, professionals, you sort of start with, I don't know what I'm gonna do with my career, what I'm gonna do with my life. And so the way I've approached it is quite strategic. I was like, well, really my goal is to get as much exposure to as many industries as possible. And so that's what I thought when I left uni. And I was like, okay, what is the one career that's going to get me access to as many different folks in different parts of the world doing very cool different things that I can learn from? And so I chose management consulting and in a natural sort of progression got into strategy just because I loved the big curly questions and the data, behind having to make strategic calls and, those pointy decisions. And so as I was thinking about leaving corporate, I was like, well, what else could I be doing but trying to make consulting accessible to as many people as possible, particularly people who are trying to figure out game-changing, world-changing innovation, and are domain experts. What are they gonna do to commercialize those ideas? How do they get that into the world to as many people, as many hands, and to have as much impact as possible? So yeah, that's kind of how that, in a very short,
Yeah.
summary, how I got here. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can go to her website and we'll tell you where that is later. But she got this long resume and things. But I love the idea of okay, so let's do this. Let's drop down to the bottom shelf. Let's explain to our audience what in the world have you created here? And then let's work our way back up to how do entrepreneurs use this technology, this consulting, because you've kind of merged two worlds, which is really intriguing. So let's talk about what in the world is Team Kaya? What is this?
Yeah. So look, I mean, I think it goes back down to the foundations of what strategy is, right? Strategy is a system for thinking that enables you to make hopefully informed decisions. And that's it. Like that's really fluffy and that's really broad. And so often when I think about, well, how do I build a solution, a strategic solution that is fit for purpose for the lower mid market, people, entrepreneurs, business owners that are trying to figure out their niche. How do they figure out how they're going to make money? How do they make sure that they're thinking about all of those operational aspects? This so esoteric, non-tangible strategy thing sounds really great, right? Really intriguing, but do they have time to think about something so broad? So when I thought about building Kaya, it was just trying to kind of take that strategy, the best practice, the structures, the frameworks, and turn it into something practical that's executable. So how do you kind of merge those two? And so, the strategy behind Kaya is almost, that kind of Venn diagram, living in between strategy and execution, where we're really agile, we're talking to the market on a constant basis, taking that information and informing our strategy and informing the way we do operations, the way we think about who we're hiring, how we're spending our resources, because resource allocation matters more than I think a lot of people think it does.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and then on the flip side of it is to say, okay, well, the other thing about consulting is that it's historically been really, really expensive. So how do I make that accessible, yeah, to earlier stage businesses? And so I think the most natural thing is kind of stealing the playbook of SaaS and saying, well, subscriptions, memberships, all of that is oriented around community and oriented around the fact that you can sort of normalize the cost along along a longer period of time. So it makes it a little bit easier. And then, of course, you tier it based on the features that we want to get access to. And so, bringing those two things together felt like a really natural fit. And that marriage has spun up something that's quite special, which now I call Team Kaya.
I love it. I love it. And yeah, the inexpensive aspect of it, because you're right. I mean, you talk about consulting and strategy consulting and hiring somebody with your background. I'm thinking, yeah, there's a few $100,000 a month, and I don't think I'm going to be able to go there. I went to your website. I looked under the pricing tab, and I thought, wow, this is like affordable.
Yeah.
Anybody could do this.
Yeah.
And business owners should do this because as a business owner, we're not taught how to think. I mean, we love what we do. We're great at what we do, but strategy is this other level of thing. And it has been out of reach, I think, for a lot of businesses. You might read a book or you watch a TED talk, but how helpful is that, really? Um, but you've created this thing where a business owner can get involved. They can have some technology, some great strategy, but there's also this community coaching component that is accessible if they want it. You've got different ways to get involved with this to meet the needs of that entrepreneur, right? Explain that,
Yeah,
unpack that a little
that's
bit.
right. Yeah. So I like the analogy of a software tool. As you know, I had a career at zero, and one of the best parts of a big platform player like that is that, all the features are modules, so to speak. So you can plug and play based on what your customer or your client needs. And that's the exact approach that I've taken to serving my clients to say, okay, this entrepreneur needs more financial support. So we're going to plug those features and we're going to plug the expertise in. Or actually, they just want a sparring partner. They want to be able to talk to us at a certain level and go, hey, I need you to think about my blind spots. I need you to bring the data that I don't really have access to. I need you to challenge me on whether or not I'm thinking about this thing the right way, or are there, a bunch of options I haven't even considered because I'm so close to the problem, to your point, right? When you're busy firefighting and operating your business, it's hard to step back and go, hey, let me dream a little bit about all of the possibilities. And so that's what we do as well. And I think the power of doing something so technology enabled is that you can kind of tailor a solution at scale. And that, I think, in the history of consulting is really quite impossible because it's so siloed, and it just takes so much time and effort to ramp up all of these different people. But if we think about consulting as almost a digitalization process, and then you bring expertise in at the right moments, then that fundamentally spins out a completely different new world of consulting.
Yeah, that's right. And the other aspect that I saw on your website was this can be a short-term thing. I think that you start with a 3-month commitment or a 3-month membership or something. And I went, wow, that's different. Because sometimes entrepreneurs, we get stuck in our head. And that's why it's so important to have outside eyes and ears looking at it to go, we don't think like you do. We think like your audience does. Right. And that's a different mindset. That's where strategy really comes to play, right?
Absolutely. I really love that point of view, and exactly it, right? So whether you're kind of taking the perspective of the customer or a shareholder or an important stakeholder, that's what strategy allows you to do. It's sort of like, okay, how do I chess play a little bit? How do I think a bit further than tomorrow and understand the potential opportunities that come from, disruptors and macro drivers around the world, but also how do I mitigate risks? How do I think about it from the shoes of a user or a potential customer, or to my point earlier, different stakeholders could be the government. How do you think about what legislators are planning for the future of your industry and make sure you're prepared and that you've got contingencies, or more importantly, you can ride the wave and some of the tailwinds that come with some of those changes. And so, whilst I mentioned that frameworks are important, I think that they're just one tool amongst a lot. When you think about strategy, it's much more about the data, how you interpret the data, and then how do you bring to bear a bunch of insights to make good decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so important for everybody to hear. So you probably need to rewind this and listen to the last 3 minutes because frameworks are amazing, but frameworks are a lot like new social media platforms, right? TikTok's amazing for the right purpose, for the right company, right? Facebook's great. Frameworks are wonderful if they fit your need, your situation, your strategy. And so many times business owners we're just hitting the wall. Entrepreneurs creating something new, you so many times you don't know what you don't know, or you can't see it because you're too close to it. And that's where Team Kaya can come in and help you short term, long term, super affordable. But it's not just technology, it's the consulting, the marriage of consulting and technology that I want people to really understand, because that's very different. It's very unique, right?
Yeah, and you know what? I think I love being in the space of being like, oh, we're doing something groundbreaking. And
Mm.
so a lot of what, I spend my time doing is raising awareness and creating sort of an education system around what it is that we're doing and the outcomes we're trying to achieve for as many entrepreneurs as possible. And I think that's a really nice way to model, the work that I'm doing, because then we talk about entrepreneurs and they're always trying to cook up something that's game changing in their own right, right?
Right.
So to see their consultants also building a business, scaling a business that is, recalibrating industries about the future of work and the future of how things, industries are heading, and really leveraging the power of technology. I think that's lovely because we're not just saying that these are good to have or to implement in your business. We're actually doing it. And I think again, that's a bit that empathy is on a different level. And I think that's quite powerful when you're connecting with earlier stage ventures. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's important because early stage ventures, a lot of them, early startups in whatever size of business you have or going to have, you need access to these brains. You need access to people, to processes, to to thinking. And I think thinking is hard to do, Kat, and that's why a lot of people don't do it. And I think what you've done is you've kind of harnessed years, decades of thinking strategy to help entrepreneurs come in and in a relatively short period of time help them jump over some of those hurdles that have been holding them back so that they have the freedom to run the race that they've been wanting to run. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And I think it comes down to two key things, right? At the end of the day, I mean, every business is unique and every entrepreneur is unique, but building a business has patterns. And so over time, when you've sort of done that, raised money with loads of startups, you've gone through, team building for early stage ventures and taken them to a scale business. You've sort of done a few, deals and M&As and things like that. You realize that some of the same symptoms of a good business or poor decision making kind of becomes quite clear. So my job really when I'm advising my clients is to help them sort of navigate some of the pitfalls, take a shorter path from A to B to C as opposed to, the ups and downs and the troughs and valleys. I think it's important to go through some of those, the journey and build that resilience. But if you can, navigate it with a bit of a sort of not a coach necessarily, but somebody who's going to help you go a little bit faster, to take a shorter path, to sort of miss some of the more difficult moments, I think it could be worth it, right? Then you end up getting more exposure to more different challenges, and potentially you grow as a person as well as a business owner. So I think that's quite powerful. And the other element is, what we do differently is not just thinking, but actually a little bit of the doing as well, and using the doing to get that information, that intelligence to inform the thinking, and using that as an iterative cycle. And I think that's a really powerful resource, right? Because if you're like, okay, I think I want to do something, we've done the thinking now, right? But how do we know for sure that our hypothesis is correct
Mhm.
without already having invested a ton of money in building a product? Is going out to the market and talking to customers, right? But how do you do that in a smart, affordable,
Right.
agile way? And that's, a lot of what we do as well.
Yeah. So many things we could be talking about, Kat. And I feel like we've just scratched the surface, but I think one of the best things our audience honestly could do is connect with you, connect with your website, dive in deep, have a call, look at what they've put together. Because if you're an entrepreneur of any size, strategy has to come first. And so many times you're running so fast, and it's not just business strategy, it's the people aspect, the operations aspect, it's everything. So wherever you're struggling, you're hitting the wall, here's a great new affordable way to connect with some people who have built amazing technology, who have the experience to help you out, and who can help you break through those walls so much faster. You don't have to struggle when you can connect with Team Kaya and Kat and her team to utilize these resources that until today, really, honestly, have not been at our fingertips, right? It's not existed because Kat and her team have brought this together using amazing technology, amazing people, and are just there to help entrepreneurs gain traction in what we're doing. Is that a fair summary?
Oh, I think better than I could have said it. So thank you.
You are so welcome. So where do people go, Kat, to take the next step to find out more about you and what you've created?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd welcome everyone to sign up for the newsletter where it's sort of like I distill a lot of the learnings from hundreds of projects and sort of get some insights on, common themes, as I mentioned, just, how we think about strategy, how we think about growth, and all of the different elements to building a business. So that's a really good way to kind of lurk a little, learn about a bit about what we're doing and the topics that we're really passionate about. And then if, there's interest in having a conversation, just hit me up either on LinkedIn or directly on the website and book a call. And I think that's the best way for us to connect and for me to kind of almost pick apart your business a little bit with all respects and to say, okay, what are the, your biggest challenges? What are the things that are going to move the needle? And even from that call alone, you should be able to walk away with a couple of really valuable things to just knock off quite quickly.
Yeah, that's amazing. And finding somebody like Kat who can ask the penetrating questions that you're not asking yourself. Many times it's one or two questions like that that the light bulb then comes on to go, oh, I never thought of that. Thank you so very much. And that just makes her day because she smiles just like that. So that's it. Link, you'll find her on LinkedIn. I'll have all this in the show notes so you can find it. The website, teamkaya, KAYA.com. And that'll be in the web or the show notes as well. Because I want you to utilize this resource. I want you to go find it. I want you to go look at it. And I want you to tell others about it because this is something that more entrepreneurs need to understand that it's available. It's super affordable. It's built well, and it can help you get the traction that you're needing. So, Kat, thank you, number one, for who you are. Thanks for having the heart to build this and for being my guest today on Expert Speak and sharing this with my audience. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. That was wonderful. Great to chat with you.